Hi, everybody. My name is Skylar McKay, and I'm so excited today to cover the topic of calibrated questions. I know I previously mentioned this in some of my videos when I was going over mirroring and labeling as a technique. A lot of sales reps struggle with getting those simple no and yes answers because a lot of them are using open-ended questions. A lot of them are coming across pushy and overbearing. Huge problem a lot of people deal with, right? So a good way to kind of avoid that altogether is leveraging calibrated questions. So Chris Voss in his book Never Split the Difference leverages calibrated questions because it's so important in every negotiation process, right? You want to uncover as much information as possible that you can leverage to build the buying motive behind whatever pain point that customer is dealing with, right? You want to uncover their pain, what they're dealing with, and calibrated questions is a great way to build rapport and build trust. I know in my previous videos I talked about tactical empathy, for example. So calibrated questions, 9 out of 10 times, they always start with how and what. Um, they're not these questions aren't used randomized. They're used strategically. So what you do is, especially if you have a planned meeting, for example, if you meet face to face, calibrated questions are great, right? Because you know you're meeting with somebody, you can understand their industry, what their title is in the business, and you can structure your calibrated questions to help guide the other party throughout the conversation, right, to the end goal, which is the close. So I'm going to go over some example questions. These questions, all of them are very general. They're like the most common used calibrated questions, and Chris Voss actually covers these in his book. And remember, Chris Voss was a former top FBI hostage negotiator. Yeah, it says a lot. All right, so I'm going to go over some of these with you, and I'm going to tell you where you would structure them in the conversation. So how am I supposed to do that? You can leverage this in the end during the close process, right? So, for example, if someone was giving you, you gave them the price of your offer, for example, and now they're countering with something ridiculously, you can say, instead of, you're blah blah blah, or you're sounding pushy, you could say, how am I supposed to do that? And remember, voice inflection and staying calm is the biggest key here. All right, that 9 out of 10 times, if you're not regulating your emotions, you're not staying calm, and you're not using strong voice inflection, this is not going to work. Okay. Here's another question: what caused you to do it? You can use that in the beginning of the conversation. What about this is important to you? That could be used in the beginning, that could be used in the mid, right? You've teed it up, you figured out what their pain point is, you built the buying motive, and now you've presented your solution. What about this is important to you? Great segue to get them to talk about what they feel is valuable in the product that you're offering. Um, how can I help to make this better for us? Okay, so customers dealing with the problem. Now you're building trust and rapport. You're like, how can I make this better for everybody, right? How would you like me to proceed? That's a great one to use in the end. What is it that brought us into this situation? That could be used in the beginning or the middle. How can we solve this problem? That could be used in the middle. What's the objective? What are we trying to accomplish here? That could be used in the beginning, right? And that is a great segue to open up the floor. How am I supposed to do that? That could be used at the end. That's them countering maybe with some sort of proposal that might not make any financial sense for your business. What's the biggest challenge you face? That is huge. That's probably one of the number one questions to use during the beginning, especially in the discovery process. How does this look to you? That's great after the presentation, right? After the discovery, you've teed up the presentation, you've offered the solution. How does this look to you? What about this works for you? That's another great one. What about this doesn't work for you? Even better one, right? That's going to uncover a lot of good information. And remember, the trick in negotiation is you want to cover as much critical data as possible that you can leverage to increase the odds of you closing the deal. Um, so I hope that helps. The biggest thing is you want to avoid close-ended questions as much as possible. 9 out of 10 times, just use how and what, frame that in the beginning of your questions, It'll go a long way. It'll get them to open up. It'll get them to explain what they're dealing with because that's the goal here. You want to cover as much pain as possible. You want to make the perceived value 10 times greater than what you're offering, right? You want it to be a no-brainer. You want to make it seem so great that that end goal for them, or what's behind the curtain, it's so great for them to work with you. You're solving so much pain that whatever the sticker price is, the perceived value of it altogether is already 10 times greater. I want to talk about a gentleman named Myron Golden. He talks a lot about perceived value and has this phenomenal offer framework. So if you're struggling with closing deals, use calibrated questions. The purpose of them is to guide them in the direction that you want to go in the consult. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, or maybe you're struggling with leveraging this, because this is one of the topics that I kind of simplified, but it's so complex and it is so important. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be more than happy to give you some advice. Purpose of my videos is to help as many people as possible, whether it's leveraging these techniques in business or leveraging them in your day-to-day life. Thanks so much for watching today, and let me know your thoughts.